Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions. The mystery of the world grid theory. Are ancient sites arranged in a global pattern? Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. Draw a line on a map between Stonehenge and the Great Pyramid of Giza, then extend it. According to proponents of the world energy grid theory, that line, if continued around the planet, passes through Persepolis, Mohenjo-daro, and the ancient city of some of the most significant sites in the ancient world, aligned with a precision that seems too exact to be coincidence. Add Easter Island, add Machu Picchu, add the Bermuda Triangle and its Pacific equivalent, the Dragon's Triangle near Japan. Suddenly a pattern emerges, or appears to emerge, that suggests the ancient world was not a collection of isolated civilizations, but a single, globally coordinated project, built to a shared geometric blueprint that modern archaeologists refuse to acknowledge. The world grid theory has been a staple of alternative history for half a century. It has its own detailed geometry, its own named proponents, its own list of confirmed sites, and anomalous phenomena. It has also been subjected to rigorous statistical analysis by mathematicians who have run the numbers carefully. The results of that analysis are unambiguous, and they explain not just the world grid, but why human beings are so consistently convinced by patterns that are not there. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the wider world of ancient technological anomalies, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Out-of-place artifacts, objects found in geological or archaeological contexts that predate their supposed invention, represent one of the most contentious categories in all of science. The scientific establishment's response to such discoveries has historically fallen into two camps. The first is skeptical investigation, careful re-examination of the dating, the context, and the object itself, which often reveals a mundane explanation. The second, rarer response is acknowledgement, a formal revision of the assumed timeline in light of evidence that cannot be explained away. Both responses have legitimate roles. The history of archaeology includes many cases where enthusiastic amateur discoveries of supposedly ancient anomalies turned out to be forgeries, misidentified natural formations, or artifacts simply displaced from their original layer by post-depositional disturbance. Critical scrutiny of extraordinary claims is not closed-mindedness. It is scientific responsibility, but it must be applied consistently. The same rigorous scrutiny applied to anomalous claims must also be applied to the mainstream assumptions those claims challenge. And sometimes, when the evidence is examined honestly, the mainstream assumption is the one that breaks. The significance of genuine out-of-place artifacts goes beyond the objects themselves. Each one represents a data point in a larger argument about ancient human capability, about what our ancestors understood, what they could engineer, and how much of that knowledge has been lost. The ancient world was not populated by primitive minds in primitive bodies. The brains that looked up at the night sky 40,000 years ago were neurologically identical to ours. Given sufficient time and motivation, they could have discovered and lost almost anything we know today. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the world grid theory, our ancient sites arranged in a global pattern, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Alfred Watkins, an English businessman and amateur archaeologist, coined the term ley lines in 1921 after claiming to observe that prehistoric sites in the English landscape appeared to align on straight lines crossing the countryside. His book, The Old Straight Track, 1925, proposed these alignments as ancient trackways between sacred sites. Statistical analysis by mathematician David Kendall in the 1980 showed that the alignments Watkins identified were not significantly different from random expectation given the density of sites in the English landscape. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered Ivan Sanderson, a naturalist and paranormal investigator, proposed in a 1972 article that 12 equidistant points on the Earth's surface, including the Bermuda Triangle, the Dragon's Triangle near Japan, and 10 other locations, experienced anomalous disappearances of ships and aircraft. He called these vile vortices. The Bermuda Triangle's anomalous disappearance rate has since been shown by Lloyd's of London and the US Coast Guard to be no higher than comparable ocean areas. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. Bruce Cathy, a New Zealand commercial airline pilot, published Harmonic 33 in 1968, claiming that a mathematical grid based on the speed of light governed physics, energy, and the placement of ancient sites and military installations. Cathy's grid has no physical mechanism, his mathematical claims have not been verified by physicists, and no peer-reviewed paper has engaged with the Cathy grid as a genuine physical model. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, Becker and Huygens published their world grid in 1987, overlaying an icosahedral dodecahedral geometric network on the Earth's surface, and claiming that a significant number of ancient sites, geological features, and anomalous phenomena fell at grid intersection points. The grid contains several hundred intersection points distributed across the globe. With thousands of known ancient sites worldwide, the probability of many coincidental intersections is mathematically high regardless of any real alignment. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of genuine geomagnetic anomalies exist on Earth's surface, most notably the South Atlantic anomaly, a region of weakened magnetic field over the South Atlantic. Magnetic variation across Earth's surface is real and measurable. However, the distribution of known geomagnetic anomalies does not correlate with either proposed grid intersection points or the distribution of major ancient sites in any pattern that exceeds random expectation. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. The Bermuda Triangle, one of the most prominently cited vile vortex locations and a fixture of world grid theory, has been investigated by insurance companies, the US Navy, and the US Coast Guard. All concluded that the region does not have a statistically higher rate of ship and aircraft disappearances than comparable high-traffic ocean areas. Most reported disappearances occurred during storms or were later found not to have occurred in the triangle at all. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the world grid theory. Are ancient sites arranged in a global pattern? This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that ancient civilizations were aware of Earth's natural energy grid and deliberately built sacred sites at grid intersection points to harness geophysical energy, the core claim of Becker-Huygens and the broad Our World Grid movement. No physical mechanism for this energy has been proposed that passes any form of scientific review, and the diversity of cultures and time periods involved, Neolithic Britons, New Kingdom Egyptians, pre-Columbian Americans, makes coordinated global planning implausible without accepting a lost global civilization for which there is no archaeological evidence. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the apparent alignments are a statistical inevitability, with enough sites and a grid containing enough intersection points. Random probability guarantees many apparent matches. Mathematician Matt Parker demonstrated this explicitly by showing that supermarkets in Great Britain align on ley lines as well as prehistoric monuments do, because any sufficiently dense set of points will produce apparent alignments on any sufficiently flexible grid. This is the mainstream scientific and statistical position. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that subtle geomagnetic variation may have influenced ancient people's intuitive choice of sacred locations in ways that produced a non-random, but not globally engineered distribution. A softer version that grants the ancient builders envira and mental sensitivity without requiring a global grid or a lost civilization. This position is speculative, and no peer-reviewed study has confirmed a correlation between geomagnetic variation and ancient site placement at scales beyond individual regions. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree, That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the world grid theory, our ancient sites arranged in a global pattern, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes statistical analysis by Matt Parker, Stand-Up Maths, applied the same alignment finding methodology used by ley line proponents to the locations of Woolworth stores in Britain, a set of modern commercial locations with no sacred significance, and found alignments of equal quality to those claimed for prehistoric monuments. This demonstration, reproduced with other arbitrary point sets, shows that the alignment finding method itself produces apparent patterns from any sufficiently dense dataset, regardless of whether any real alignment exists. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented David Kendall's 1989 statistical analysis of Watkins' British ley line claims, published in the Journal of the Royal Statistical Society, tested whether the alignments of prehistoric sites in Britain were statistically significant. His analysis concluded they were not. The number of apparent alignments was consistent with random expectation given the density of sites in the landscape. Kendall's work is the most rigorous statistical treatment of the original ley line claim and has not been refuted by any subsequent peer-reviewed analysis. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed satellite-derived databases of global ancient site locations now contain thousands of confirmed entries, enabling rigorous spatial statistics. No peer-reviewed study using these databases has confirmed that ancient site distribution globally is non-random in ways that correspond to any proposed grid geometry. The appeal of world grid theory rests on selective citation of matching sites while ignoring the large number of grid intersection points that fall in empty ocean or uninhabited terrain with no associated ancient sites. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the world grid theory, our ancient sites arranged in a global pattern. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. World grid theory remains extremely popular in alternative history communities, sustained by the intuitive appeal of global patterns and the genuine mystery of why ancient people built where they built. No mechanism for a physical energy grid has been proposed that survives scientific scrutiny. Geological and geophysical surveys of the claimed grid intersection points have not revealed anomalies distinguishing them from surrounding terrain. The statistical case against the theory has been made clearly and repeatedly, most accessibly by Matt Parker's viral video demonstrating that supermarkets align on ley lines. The deeper question the theory raises, why do independent ancient cultures so often choose similar types of locations for sacred sites, has a less dramatic but more interesting answer. Topography, water sources, astronomical sightlines, and defensibility produce convergent choices without any global coordination. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the world grid theory, our ancient sites arranged in a global pattern, from the historical record, through the physical evidence across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of world grid ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.